Let me welcome everybody to the Future Trends Forum. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm your host, MC, and cat herder for the hour. I'm very, very glad to see all of you here today, especially for someone like Kelly, who seems to be living in paradise. I'm glad you took a few minutes to get back online. And welcome to Kathy. Before we get started, let me just quickly introduce the forum, how it works, where it comes from, who supports it, and then we'll start in today's unusual experiment, a collective, collaborative exploration into the future of education and technology. So to begin with, Tara, if you could hit the next slide, please. The Future Trends Forum is a collaborative, discussion-based video conference spin-off from the Future Trends in Technology and Education report. FTTE is a monthly trends analysis, which is dating back more than 5 years, which looks at almost 90 trends in education and technology. The idea is to try and look carefully at the present, looking for seeds of the future. If you haven't been to it before, if you haven't read a report, just go to ftte.us, download some of the PDFs, and take a look. It's written for a general audience, and it is completely and thoroughly researched. We have roughly 80 to 110 footnotes in each issue, so please do take a look. Now, another thing to think about when you take a look at here, let's go to the next slide, please. In order to explain the forum, is that this is a collaborative effort, a discussion-based effort that is international in scope. Tara, could we get the next slide, please? We have participants from around the world. We already saw Nicole Hennig has shown up, who is temporarily in Hungary. You can see from this map that we've had people from almost every continent in the world, South America, Australia, all across Asia, all over Europe, and across North America. It's really, really important to think about the future of education and technology with as global perspective as possible. The technologies move across borders, great ideas move between continents. This is the best way to really understand this. Now let Leslie from Lewisburg, PA. Next slide, please, Tara. Now, we can only do this work. Leslie, the sound is on. I'll just hit checkbox. We can only do this work with the support of a series of generous sponsors. I'd like to thank them and invite you to join them. So to begin with, NYSERDAT from New York State is a nonprofit that helps connect libraries, museums, colleges, and universities to the internet broadband speeds. We're grateful to them for their support. We're also grateful to Shindig because, as you can tell, Shindig provides this great technology that we're using. And let me just take a minute to show you how the technology works for those of you who haven't used it before or for whom this is new or you just need a refresher. So the way the Shindig environment works, it looks like a lot of video conference platforms that you've seen before, but not quite. So right here where I am and where these slides are for just a minute, it's called the stage. And this is like a stage. Everybody here can hear and see me and everybody else on the stage. And below us is what I think of as a participant swarm. This is where you can see, say, Kathy or Paul or Joe or Kelly. Every person, where we log in, are represented either by a video stream, so we can see Nicole in front of, I think, a mic, or a silhouette. So the form, say, Mandy or Rod or Lisa. Now, each one of those represents a person. If you'd like to communicate with all those people, there's a neat thing you can do here. You double click on their icon, and your two icons can just click together like Legos, and you'll get your own private audiovisual bubble if they'd like to talk to you. So that's a nice thing to have. Now, I mentioned this is a discussion-based forum, and let me just show you a few of the ways you can discuss and contribute and communicate. So if you look here at the bottom of the screen, there's a white strip with a few different icons. There's 3 of them you can click. If you click on the second from the left, there's a text chat. If you click that, up will pop a chat box, and then you can chat with the nearest 18 or so people who have logged in with you. So right now, you could chat with, say, Leslie, Lisa, Nicole, Joe, Paul, and myself. Not to mention Tara, Jay, Rashawn, Rod, Maya, and Mandy, and Vicky. So that works. So that's basic text chat. Now, if your mic and camera are working, you can do something even more. So in the middle of the screen, in the middle of that white strip, you can see a raised hand. If you click that, we can beam you up on the stage so that you can talk with me and everybody else who's on stage as well as everybody else. So it becomes a multi-point video conference environment. So that's really easy to do. So please consider that if your mic and camera are working and you're in the physical environment where you can talk. Now, there's another way of communicating. If you look at that white strip again, between the raised hand and between the text chat box, you'll see a kind of question mark. You click that, and you can type in a comment or a question. That won't go to the chat box. That will go up on the screen. We'll flash it for everyone to see, and I'll read it out loud for everyone to hear. So if you haven't had a chance to do it before, those are 3 different ways for communicating, and we want them all to work. Now, let's just, before we go further, let me just make sure everyone's sound is working. Joe can hear us. I'm guessing Kelly can hear us. Lisa and Leslie seem to be having issues. Let me just check. Let me ask in the chat box. Leslie, welcome. Glad you can hear us. Lisa, I hope you are hearing us now as well. So, we want to thank Shindig for providing this technology, and I think you'll see it's a pretty easy one for you to be able to communicate with us. Now, Tara, over to the next slide, please. The last source of support, and in many ways one of the best, comes from you. Over at patreon.com, we have dozens of people who've signed up to contribute just a little bit to help keep this Futurist work going. If you haven't seen it before, Patreon is like Kickstarter. It's a crowdfunding project to support creative people. And you simply sign up to contribute some amount of money every month. So if you haven't done this before, just go to the site, go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, and take a look. I think you'll find lots of people supporting this, and we'd be grateful for any help you can give. Now, on with today's forum. So the idea here today is an experiment. Instead of having a guest, instead of having a presentation or a report, instead of having an open-ended venue, what we have today is a structured exploration of a specific, narrow topic. We're going to take a look at a single question about the future of education. I'm going to ask you some questions to begin with, but then I think all of us together will collaborate in imagining what this could be. The question and topic is, how will education use mobile computing over the next decade? So think about between now and 2027. Still a science fiction sounding year, right? Think about how mobile computing might change in education. How would the mobile environment look differently on a college campus, the public library, the museum, at a research university? Now, this is the guiding question for this hour, and we're going to keep whacking at this from a number of angles. And I'd like you all to contribute based on your experience and your ideas, because each of you has great perspective, each of you has your own background, your own approaches, and it'd be wonderful to share all of this. And so rather than having one person present, trying to have as many different perspectives as possible. Now, to begin with, to start this off, let me just see this a bit. Let's start quickly with the past and then leap into the present so that we get to the future. Just a note from the past, as a futurist, it's really, really satisfying to be right about something. So back in 1999, 2000, I started researching mobile computing. So this is back in the flip phone days. This is back in the car phone days. This is back before the United States figured out that mobile was a big deal. This is back before the iPhone, back before the iPod. And I was researching with Howard Rheingold about his new book on mobile computing. This caught my imagination. I started seeing the potential for mobile everywhere. So for the next 10 years, I spent a lot of time digging up what other countries were doing with mobile and what educational possibilities there were. And we, in the United States, slowly progressed. The rest of the world leaped ahead with mobile phones in all kinds of ways. Then in 2006, the US figured this out via the iPhone, followed by the Android phone. And suddenly, the United States was all concerned about mobile and doing all kinds of interesting things with mobile phones. More devices began to come up and proliferate. So you think about the tablet, you could think about everything like Fitbits, you could think about, of course, the iPod. You could think about different types of mobile phones, everything from dumb phones to feature phones to smartphones, and varieties of tablets and other devices as well. Most of these devices were connected most of the time using a variety of networks, everything from 2G, 3G, 4G to wireless Wi-Fi to using Bluetooth. And they really began to change our lives in all kinds of ways. Everything from altering public spaces to arguably reducing privacy, to giving us more access to information and more people, to boosting social media in certain key ways. And we're still thinking about how mobile has changed the world. Now, I just want to put all that you know about, just to put that on stage to show you that these things change quickly, and they start changing education. Now, I'm not going to tell you how it's changed education, because you all know. What I'd like to ask you to do now is to map out the current state of play of mobile technology. Tell us what's going on at your institution with mobile. Now think about it in a lot of ways. That is, how many devices do students bring if you're at a face-to-face campus? Does your campus support mobile devices from an IT perspective? Do they help students if have mobile devices run into problems? Do you have educational technology software that is optimized for mobile? Have physical spaces in campus changed? Has your student body changed as a result of mobile? So let's just do this right now to begin with. This is the first question. The first part of this is, what is the current state of play at your institution where you are? So grab the chat box right here, or click the raised hand if you'd like to type in a specific observation you want us to read out loud, or click that button to join us on stage. In fact, why don't we have Kelly start us off? I think that's Kelly Walsh. Why don't you join us on stage if your camera and mic are working? Kelly, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me all right?
Perfectly. My gosh, where are you today? Hawaii?
No, I'm in New York, and it's just that the tinting on the windows behind me makes it almost always look tropical. It's unusual.
That's ideal. Good for you. Good thinking.
I'll take it.
So tell us, Kelly, what's the mobile environment like where you are?
We have a long way to go. It's a huge focus of the next 3 years in terms of our strategic technology plan. I've coined a phrase I call CW Everywhere as we continue to make certain functionality we have currently more mobile friendly, and as we move towards implementing new technology that will allow as many aspects of the educational experience for students to take place on the phone. So a big focus, but still a long way to go, as I think many schools have.
You said CW. What does that stand for?
Oh, the College of Westchester. Thank you.
There we go. Here in upstate New York, that's right. So that's a key thing. So the College of Westchester everywhere. So wherever a student goes, they can access this.
That's the vision.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's a crucial part of this. Where we have, in theory, or ideally, always on access. Well, stick around. Stay on the stage there for a second. So we'd like Nicole Hennig to join us if she can. So let's see if we can bring out Nicole up on stage. And while that's happening, I always think we need some kind of dramatic drum roll or some kind of rumbling sound effect to describe the possibility of some beaming on. Maybe dun 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 dun.
Hi.
Hello, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How's Budapest?
It's beautiful here. It's September weather with nice, cool air and ancient buildings, and it's just beautiful.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I'm
yeah.
so glad you could make time for us.
Sure.
So,
I'm
by
just
the way,
here
before you say anything, I need to introduce the two of you guys. So first, if you don't know Kelly Walsh, Kelly is an expert in blended learning. So you should definitely pay attention to Kelly if you're at all interested in blended. He hasn't mentioned it yet, so I had to. And then Nicole, where are you based normally? Are you in Boston?
I didn't quite hear what you said.
Where are you based, Nicole? In Boston?
Where am I based? Right now I'm living in Brattleboro, Vermont, but I'm a digital nomad, as they say. I move all around with my laptop and live in different locations. So, I worked at MIT for 14 years. But in 2013, I left to start my own business doing educational training for librarians about new technologies. So I spent the past 3 winters in Tucson. I spent 2015 for 3 months in Budapest and Thailand for 2 months. I spent 5 months in Seattle in 2014, and I've just been hopping all around. But right now I'm in Brattleboro for a year.
Well, great.
Vermont.
Well, on behalf of the state of Vermont, I welcome you back.
Thank you.
Nicole,
so
if you don't know her, is an expert in mobile and education. And if you don't know her newsletter, you definitely have to grab it because it's really, really vital about mobile apps and education. And we're so glad you could come here. What are you seeing in the state of play right now What's the current status of mobile in education?
Well, I work with a lot of librarians from different institutions, mostly in the US, but right now I'm doing an interesting project just for 3 weeks here in Budapest. There's a group of 4 librarians from Myanmar who came here for the whole semester to do technology training at Central European University. And they're a really interesting case because Myanmar was closed to the rest of the world for so long and just a few years ago opened up. And so their library was very primitive. Everything was primitive there, but suddenly they've jumped into the mobile world, kind of skipping the desktop world. So I've been hearing all about how smartphone adoption is huge there. It's like 85% of people have smartphones. They never had computers. So, and of course they all use Facebook and YouTube and whatever, but they don't have a lot of information literacy or any knowledge of the whole past decade that we've all lived through with desktops. So it's pretty interesting. They are very interested in learning about mobile for education. I did a workshop this morning with them about app literacy for librarians, which is something I promote a lot to librarian groups, is that we should be really literate about, recommending the best mobile apps for education and so forth. So, they face a lot of challenges, but it's interesting to see a country where they skipped desktop computing and go right to mobile.
That's huge. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
We have one. Thank you, Nicole. We're bringing up Joe Murphy from Ohio to join us. While he's teleporting up on stage, let me just quickly summarize. We're talking about mobile giving us access to education everywhere. We have a role for the library, which is very important. We have the global south leapfrogging the desktop environment and all of that comes with it. And the rise of app literacy, as we have so many apps that give us access to the digital world. Joe, what would you add to that from Kabir?
Well, we just made an interesting environmental change, which I think speaks to some assumptions and some possibilities, in that we implemented two-factor authentication for a bunch of systems, including student-facing ones, including the LMS, which speaks to an assumption that everybody's carrying their phone most of the time.
Right.
And then I guess the question is, how long will it take for faculty members to think of that as a resource? Right now, some of our faculty members are thinking of it as a limitation, and they're, what do I do if a student shows up in class and their phone battery isn't charged? I'm like, well, same thing you do when they show up and they don't have a pen, I guess. But I think it's an interesting question to see that what that points to is that the LMS has become an in-classroom technology on our campus. So how long will it take for us to also see the phone as an in-classroom technology? Broadly.
That's vital. What do you guys think about that, Nicole and Kelly?
It's a long road. It's a great ideal thing. I mean, I see all the time we're requested for more flexible spaces. Can we just have a bunch of computers on the fly when we need them? And in the back of my head, I can't help but think most of your students have a computer in their hands, and our wireless is great. There are some teachers who have taken advantage of that. And it makes me think a little bit of a phrase that came to mind while listening to Nicole about the sort of the leapfrog effect. So as time goes by and for budgetary constraints and other reasons we don't necessarily get to do all we want, some of those problems may be erased by the ubiquitousness of that mobile phone.
Yeah, I think we need a lot more training for teachers and faculty members on how to effectively use these things in the classroom, because they just don't have time to get up to speed on that. They're focused on their own thing. So there's a lot of need for training.
Absolutely.
I feel like one of those people most of the time. My cell phone makes me feel very, very old because I don't understand it. And it doesn't work with the metaphors that I do understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
But Joe, you
Well
do such
said.
great work in helping faculty. You do really, really important work. Joe runs a center for teaching and learning at Kenyon College, which is a terrific environment. I really recommend following them to see what they're up to. Well, this covers a lot. Faculty training through Access Everywhere. How about bring your own devices? How about different types of hardware that people need? How about vending machines that let people borrow laptops and tablets? Is there anything else that we need to mention in terms of the current mobile and education environment?
There's so many possibilities, and you've hit on quite a few of them. But it is interesting to think of, will the phone ultimately be, if we can provide the training and the migration of the apps and what it takes so that it really is possible for the phone to be central, will it then essentially make all those other platforms and approaches somewhat less relevant or less meaningful? I would think by 2017, that's a possibility.
Do you mean 2027? Or?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yes, 2027.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Kisa Johnson adds to this the idea of microlearning, that with devices you can quickly grab access to learning content or learning experiences and run with them. That's too short a summary, but microlearning is definitely very, very important. Pedagogy as well as structure. And Joe seconds that in the chat box. Well, Kisa, keep thinking about that. And let me, now that we're in the present, that was kind of a warm-up exercise. Get you guys going. Let's think about where this could go in the next 10 years. Right? Kelly just started pushing us this way. So let's think about hardware and software first. I've been talking about very conservative technologies. I've been talking about laptops, tablets, phones, Fitbits. What are some of the new technologies, the new hardware and software that we should anticipate for the next 10 years?
I think we're going to see a lot more with, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nicole, please.
I think we're going to see a lot more with wearables, with the new version of Google Glass coming out that are more subtle and built into what you're already wearing. And I think the idea of having this big slab of glass computer thing in your pocket might not always be the thing, in not too long. I have an Apple Watch. I use it a lot. Looking forward to what we can do with augmented reality, especially if it's in the form of eyeglasses, that you're already wearing. I've just been seeing a lot of interesting demos from the new AR kit from Apple, where developers are showing what they can build with augmented reality, like 3D virtual maps. I saw one today on a website that showed I don't know what you call it, like an animation of, but it looked very realistic, of the moon landing, where they showed the astronauts and their moon lander, and you could twirl the whole moon around, and you heard the recording of what they really said then. And it was just talking about using, instead of showing flat maps in the classroom, being able to really jump into a whole world very easily is already quite possible with, this AR kit with the new Apple devices.
So that's both the hardware, the software, and also the educational component. So we have wearables, we have augmented reality. What else are you guys seeing?
I was thinking something similar to what Nicole was mentioning, that as I've seen the proliferation of virtual reality devices, as well as things like Google Glass, to help people in the field. So I was reading a story about elevator technicians and how they could go into the field without having to be, ultimately trained experts, and very easily bring an expert right into the conversation, showing them what they're looking at and seeking their guidance. And it really, brought some interesting ideas to mind about how that could fundamentally redefine what mobile learning means.
That really, really changed things. So we have VR and AR accompanied by either phones or by mobile wearables. And they could go even further still. We have Maya Georgieva in the audience, one of the world's leading experts in mixed reality and augmented reality and virtual reality for education. Maya, let me know if you're ready to come up on stage. If you can't come up on stage, then just let us know. Type something in so that I can flash it up on the screen and read it out loud. You'll also have to tell us what country you're in right now, because I know you've been touring the planet. Okay, so while Maya is typing and trying to get some responses, I shamelessly exploit her skills and intelligences. Let me ask you about interfaces. If you guys all go back to the 1960s, you can find one of the greatest videos of all time called The Mother of All Demos. If you haven't seen it, it's mind-blowing. This is where the great Doug Engelbart introduces you to the mouse and Windows interface. And it's fantastic as a demo because he's showing it off and you can hear people flipping out of the audience. Oh my God, how are you doing that? You just click on it and it pops up. And that was for 2 generations, our leading interface for computing. Well, with mobile, that interface is now being kind of pushed to the side, where we have voice, we have physical interfaces, we have swiping, we have all kinds of new interfaces. Do you see any new changes in interfaces as we look ahead?
Definitely. Since I got my Amazon Echo, I've been really hot on voice interfaces. It's starting to work pretty well, and I don't have a Google Home yet, but I'd like to get that one too. And also the thing about chatbots, where people are so used to texting. I saw an interesting story about, I forget which university it was at, but there was a class about AI, and some subgroup of the class made a bot that pretended to be one of the TAs, and it was so realistic, and they didn't tell the students, so they were chatting with this bot and thought it was a real TA until the end, and that was pretty interesting. So this whole chatbot thing is another type of user interface that I think people like and are used to using. I always love it when I'm doing a customer support on somewhere, like on my bank, and they have a chat so I don't have to call them. And then the whole idea of a natural user interface, a NUI instead of a GUI, that's the thing. I mean, it's making it easier for elderly people, for babies, for toddlers, for anyone to figure out how to use, like the device kind of goes away and it's all about the human part of human interaction, touching and talking and seeing with the camera as, the AR stuff is. So I think it's a really good development. I've read so many good stories about people with disabilities too, using these technologies like Sendero GPS Look Around for the blind. It was invented by blind people. It's a wayfinding app. They have Look Tell Money Reader, so you can recognize currency that people hand to you if you're blind. And there's just so much good potential for people with various disabilities.
Well, that's a really important point to bring up accessibility issues. That's really, really huge. Paul chimes in to say that the bot at the University Bob is called Jill Watson.
Oh yeah, Jill.
Maya, so glad to see you. Where are you now?
Hi, Brian. Well, I'm actually in New York City. I landed very late on Monday night. And I brought the good weather, the nice sunny weather with me because it's really hot and steamy in New York today. We have a little bit of a few summer days, I think, banked. So it's great. It's great conversation once again. And I like how you kicked it off with looking in the past. And I think looking in this, especially when we think about mobile learning, I think, and where we are today with AR in particular and VR, but AR and MR more so, is that, and also bringing what Nicole just mentioned, can we leap the whole desktop with some international audience? And I think definitely we witnessed that with the iPad. Once the iPad came around and we could write apps and these kind of small programs with kind of easy functionality and menus, it definitely, kind of like had speared a real revolution in terms of internationally, educators bringing those into the classroom. One of the the barriers I saw in that was really purely that many of those apps are written in English. And, we are seeing now, like actually in the last couple of years, that a lot of apps have been, introducing multilingual, not only Spanish, but multiple languages menus, which makes such a huge difference for these folks out internationally. When an application like Class, like various chat and discussion boards and, even things like, we always thought that we'll be editing videos on a desktop, and actually it's very easy to edit and publish and record videos on a mobile. So I think that's definitely, we kind of witnessed that, and, it helped, both educate, encourage educators and students to get there. I think we're going to, that said, obviously we're still dealing with two ecosystem here, is the Apple and, App Store and the Google Play Store. And, that is always something educators kind of like have to really consider at this point. I think we are kind of faced with the same, unfortunately, going forward with AR. I think one of the good things about AR is that I agree, we're going to bring voice. And so I think I'm optimistic that the interfaces will get more easier and better to translate in multi-language environments. But with AirKit, which I think it's fascinating, and Google catching up, and basically something like Facebook trying to do something that will work on any phone, it will be interesting to see, how that develops. Is it easier to use something that is very much software based, something like what Facebook may be doing or Snapchat may be doing, versus AirKit and AirCode for Google, and how quickly will those mature? And I think that they will, because ultimately people want to write apps that are going to they like those apps to be used, and I think we'll see how that translates. But same thing, I think that a huge potential for augmented and mixed reality type of application because of voice and gesture, and the precursors are Google Glass, and today the precursors was something that is kind of very feasible, like even though expensive, like the Microsoft HoloLens, which is a wearable computer. Now, you basically, it's already used in various industries where, people are sort of communicating, in time, and receiving and, using applications to learn and fix problems, which is oftentimes what, education, when you have an educational question, you ultimately want to learn about that question in some context and kind of like basically being able to solve it. So I think I think we are going to be kind of entering there, and just like probably sort of the tablet and the, tablets sort of landscape, we will kind of find good applications, and we'll bring them to the classroom, and we'll bring them to the internships and the field trips and students, and then we'll enhance the student experience, whether it's based on geo data or contextual data, or sort of something more like in other ways, like the humanities, where you can step into a particular setting and see it go back to 1920s and experience that. And for younger generation students, that's really has a huge impact on them being able to enter that world. So ultimately, I think.
Pause you just for a second, because this is fantastic, and this is why if you don't know Maya, what's wrong with you? Maya and Emery Craig run a consultancy and a think tank called Digital Bodies. So if you just go to digitalbodies.net, this is, for my money, the world's center for talking about mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality education. So please, these guys are fantastic. You can tell from Maya, off the top of her head, can deliver a seminar on how these are changing education. Let me just walk back a second just to make sure that we start off with a map of the present, and as this map of the next 10 years unfolds, let's just pull a few of these details. One is that we're talking about languages. Let me ask everybody here, what do you think is going to happen with translation? So not just the important thing of adding new content, of writing a program and such like that thing, but what do you think about the role of real-time translation, whether Google Translate or Google Goggles or anything like that? Are we approaching the next 10 years something close to the Star Trek Universal Translator?
I have seen it improve.
Question. Oh, go ahead.
I have seen it improve a lot in the past year or so, Google Translate. It's gotten better. And I was studying Spanish a couple of years ago before I went to live in Oaxaca, Mexico for a while. And of course, all the teachers say, don't use Google Translate. It's not correct, But in the real world, people do use it all the time. And I like that it has the camera input now. Like now that I'm in Budapest and I'm shopping in the grocery store, I can just point that camera right to the frozen cherries to see if they're pitted frozen cherries, and it'll read the label to me.
Wow.
It in real time, it translates the label kind of in this AR kind of view, So, and if you want to, you can capture it with the camera, but all you need to do is point it. So you can read the ingredients in Hungarian, which I'm probably never going to learn. So. I do see a lot of forward thinking in that. Also, I like to use Amazon Echo, though they don't, how they have these skills for Echo, but you have to say Open Translate, which is the name of the skill, and then say, how do you say such and such in Spanish? Whereas now with the new version of Siri on my new iPad Pro, you can just ask it to translate things because it's built in. So I love that. You just talk to it and say, well, how do you say whatever, and then you can say, they have about 6 languages in there right now, but I'm sure they'll add more. Siri's been getting a lot better too than it was at first. So I see I see hope in that area.
Yeah, Google Home will translate, I guess, intro level, excuse me, intro level sort of phrases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
But one of the best apps for Google Glass.
Oh, you can just pause for a minute. I don't want to make you talk while you're like
Yeah,
coughing.
one of the best apps for Google Glass was World Lens. And what World Lens did is basically you can point your sort of Google Glass and it will basically read it. It will overlay, if it's a pharmacy, it will overlay pharmacy on top of the Spanish or the English or the German word. And actually at the NMC 3 years ago, we did that in the Idea Lab. I had printed all kinds of things in various languages, and we had people kind of look through Google Glass and do this immediate translation of sites of sort of for the demonstration. We use a number of sort of key sites and things like pharmacy and school and things. But it was instant. It literally was. I mean, it was less than like how long it takes for your camera to focus. So I think huge impact in terms of immersing students into sort of these type of multi-language environments.
That's enormous. That's a huge change. Please, Kelly, go ahead.
I would add that Waverly Labs at waverlylabs.com is actually taking orders right now for a pilot live translation earpiece for like $250. Don't know how many languages or when they plan on shipping it, but they've been working towards that for a while, apparently.
So that would be another piece of hardware where we have in the mobile environment where we'd also have the earpiece. We already have that now, but this would be the earpiece on steroids.
Yeah.
Have you heard about
That's
those
huge.
hearables, like the ones made by Hear One, that they kind of
Sounds smart.
moving towards? I think it's Hear One that makes a hearable. It's like these little wireless earbuds that can customize the sound in your environment. So like if you're in a noisy place, you can turn down the noise of the subway going by, and it's sort of like an advanced hearing aid to make your hearing better, even if you don't have a hearing problem. Or to change, like if you're at a live music concert, it can change the sound of things, by adjusting it. There's another hearable that's, that you talk to. And I have the new Apple AirPods. Those are pretty fun because, you can talk to Siri in them. And just the mere fact of having 0 wires, even though they look kind of weird, they look like cut off Apple earbuds, but they connect so easily to Bluetooth without any problems. And you can talk to Siri and listen to things. And I think there's going to be a lot of development in hearables and like making people sound better than quote normal, right? Like making us more like cyborgs,
More and more. That's a great point. I'm opening these tabs in my second computer right now, and I have to be careful. I'll be too distracted. That's a fantastic thing to think about. Kelly, is this an example of the synchronous mobile learning you were talking about in the chat box a minute ago?
I think all of these types of solutions could play a role in the ease with which that could work. So Brian's mentioning that I threw in the chat box. I'm wondering when we're going to see more of a emergence of the synchronous online experience. So, we can learn anywhere. One of the big downsides of traditional online is that it is an asynchronous experience. We're not really there together. But why can't we all meet together online and have a course using platforms like Shindig and aided with, right? So anybody from any language could participate by having one of these types of automated translation applications or devices. So really interesting. And, again, thinking forward to 2027, I have to imagine we're going to see a lot more of the convergence of these things, making education much more of an anywhere, anytime experience than it is.
Oh, fascinating. That's quite a vision. We're talking 10 years, which is a long time for the mobile world. Well, let's push this up. Let me just ask everybody first, if you haven't had a chance to contribute, everybody. So this is Kisa and Paul and Kathy, Alan, everybody else. Please, again, feel free to pop up questions or comments. Again, using the chat window, which a bunch of you are already. Oh my gosh. Or to use the question mark so that we can read a question or comment out loud. Or click the raised hand to join us on stage. You've seen now how easy that is, especially with brilliant people like my guests here. Paul in the chat box takes us a little further forward into the mixed reality world. He specifically asks about Magic Leap as one example. He wants to know how that will impact education. And because he's a realist, he says if and when they launch to market. But there's Magic Leap and also Microsoft playing a big role. Maya, why don't you take a whack at that?
All right. So, well, Magic Leap is still talking about launching something. So I guess it's kind of hard, but we have to give them the benefit of the doubt that something is coming down the stream and we'll see it. It sounds more and more like they're looking at entertainment. But I was about late, I guess, August or mid-August, I actually met for a second time with the Magic Leap, sort of one of their gurus, creative wizard. They all wizards there. That's their titles, literally. And he kind of outlined to me a couple of scenarios that are really, to translate those scenarios within our educational context, was that they would definitely, where I saw that is a embodied virtual assistant that will sort of be materializing next to you. Once, I think they're looking first into very much entertainment sort of scenarios. This will be probably linked to, major sort of movie and sort of with the sort of industry, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek, I don't know, maybe Star Wars, they seem to like Star Wars better. But, also seeing these kind of like sort of a character that may be kind of part of your life and may be, completely augmented. They do not use the word hologram, which it's kind of a way to explain this, but for them it's very much, mixed reality. And, that's why I use sort of the word virtual assistant or virtual sort of a, presence next to you who would have a sort of embodied, sort of shape that will be following you, and you can kind of come home and turn it on into entertainment sort of mode, but you can also turn it into a learning mode. Now we're talking, at the beginning, I think it will be very custom and probably will be, tailored to a particular experience. Or if you want to walk into the scene of a movie, and kind of experience it for yourself and be there with the main character, so you can drive that, spaceship. But where I see that going is really, what we've been talking for some time with AI, having a virtual reality sort of VR or MR assistant that can interact with you, that can know you and can feel very real. So I think that's kind of the take from this conversation with Magic Leap. They keep working. I think they have switched some of their early kind of vision on how are they going to project that AR and that MR on a more technical level. But as we have seen, and those of you who follow, I'm sure have seen a number of patents have been leaked out or been kind of discussed in the press. So every, I think 3 months, there's a new patent of the glasses. But that they just got another round of funding. I don't know how much more, is required. In terms of the Microsoft, I think the HoloLens, I kind of really want to see the next version of HoloLens. There's not much conversation about it, but I hope that soon we'll hear. I'd like to see a lighter, less expensive HoloLens sort of device that can, it's okay. It's good to have a one device to demonstrate, and possibly in a very technical course, it could work. But we really need more in order to make this a social contextual and all the things that matter to learning. So I think the devices they're launching later this around the holiday season, which are sort of a VR. It's a it's not a transparent sort of headset. It's a VR device in which students will be able to actually take sort of see and experience all the MR HoloLens apps. They will be just projected onto a virtual sort of space. So in a way, you will not be projected onto your living room or your classroom, but you can kind of customize a digital virtual classroom where students can interact with those apps. So this is a good step. For me, it's always like, okay, how, as you know, Brian, how close are we to making this, democratic and easy to get to, and, just into the hands of students as producers kind of concepts. And so I think that next version of HoloLens is I think the very first stop where we should be looking at. I don't see the current device as suitable for that.
Okay, so look carefully at the next HoloLens. I have a whole stack of questions, but Kisa beat me to it. This is a question for everybody. Again, not just the three of you who have joined me up here on stage, but for everybody who's listening, watching, reading. How does using the 360 camera and storytelling play into the mobile learning world? And Kisa, if your mic and broadband and camera are working, you can join us on stage here too. Let's just take a run at this. What does the 360 camera and storytelling do for mobile learning?
Okay, I'll chime in because we did that makerspace, and then I'll be brief. So hopefully so I think it's huge. I mean, we brought, as you know, Brian, we had this conversation at the NMC conference, and we brought a number of different sort of portable Samsung and other models, Insta360, and we gave folks brief instructions. And within 15 minutes, people who've never used a 360 camera were able to connect it to their mobile phones and take shots and do things. And that is,
nice.
That is number one. So we've reached that moment. Now, thinking in a 360 format is what I'm kind of thinking a lot, and I'm, we're kind of starting to offer workshops in that area and thinking in what do we do? Because, obviously, it is a different format. It's not the sort of flat point and shoot camera type of video, and it takes thinking ahead of time. Certain things are easy, like, being able to take your campus sort of 360 on your campus, main sort of campus space. That is very easy, but that is just kind of like more illustration than, bringing into storytelling where it's you want to tie that to a story. And I think now, very interestingly, we have more on that in particular, is that YouTube released this 180 format, because they found that 360 is kind of difficult to work with. It's difficult to work with for people in journalism, and it's difficult to work with in with people who have the time and the luxury to experiment. And they found that for the consumers and many other of us, the 180 format may be actually a place to fast to get in. And they both present new opportunities and new ways to think about stories. But I think the good point is these cameras are now $200, very accessible. It's just, get and play.
So if we're thinking 10 years from now, they're $200 now, they'll be disposable halfway over the next decade. That's enormous. So I put the link, by the way, for the VR 180 site. I put that into the chat box because that's a really interesting idea. Maybe it's a transition on the way to 360.
Right.
Stage. Great question, Kisa. I've been pounding away at you guys, asking all these great questions, and I have to just change focus a little bit. I don't mean the pun, video focus. I didn't mean that at all. If we're talking about technology and education, we haven't talked a lot about faculty. And faculty attitudes towards mobile have been very, very interesting. They've been all over the place, all over the map. We've had faculty who embrace mobile and assign students to use mobile devices. We've had faculty who try and turn their classrooms into Faraday cages. We've had kind of everything in between. So I'm curious, where do you think faculty attitudes will develop over the next decade? Do you think a younger generation will be more amenable to mobile? Do you think we'll see concerns about privacy reduce the use of mobile? Will students as makers really change it? What do you do for the faculty side of this?
I'll weigh in on that. Having been paying a fair amount of attention to this for about 10 years or so now, I think we all see that there are pockets within every institution. There are, just those individuals that are just really into it, often regardless of age. Certainly there is a gradual, as younger folks become teachers and faculty, they bring with them a little more of that natural experience. So there's a lot of potential there, but in all areas of professional development, it's been challenging to provide enough time, enough resources for the institutions to provide them and for the faculty to find the time and make the time. And I don't see that changing much. I wish so much it could change more quickly, but don't know quite how we get there besides just letting time work its magic.
I heard change one funeral at a time.
And I think that's a good point about how it's not just older people aren't into technology, that people say that all the time. I think it really just depends on the person. Like there's some young people who are Luddites and there are older people who are really into the new technologies. So, I just think that's good to keep in mind.
Oh, it is. I mean, if you're talking about hundreds of millions of people, the study showed, generally speaking, the older a person is in the United States, the less likely they are to use a lot of wide variety of technologies. The younger, the more likely, generally speaking. Yeah, obviously.
It makes a difference if you grew up with it,
Yeah. Oh, all kinds of differences. Your education level, above all, your income level, geography, and race. There's a lot there. So, what do you see, Nicole? You work with a wide variety of people, institutions and countries. What kind of faculty changes do you expect?
About faculty or anyone?
Faculty.
I mostly work with librarians these days. I haven't had a lot of direct contact with faculty. I've just been doing webinars and courses and training for academic librarians, public librarians, school librarians, all sorts. And I found that like any group, there's the early adopter people and there's the late adopters and there's everyone in between. So the people who are kind of late adopters are just starting to get interested in wanting to learn about mobile apps now because they realize they have to. Whereas back in 2012, I had all the early adopters taking my Apps for Librarians course, So next year right now I'm doing also courses on privacy and security because that's such a hot topic right now. And then and everybody's into that. But next year I'm going to do something about smart digital assistants like Google Home and Alexa and all of that. And I think the early adopters will be the first ones to want to do that, do those courses and webinars and things. And it's just interesting working with different groups of people because the ones who like to try everything new first are very different than the ones who want to hold back and wait and see how it all pans out. And it's just good to understand where they're coming from in those different places, the ones who hold back and wait and the ones who, and we can all work together, because people have different strengths. So the people who tend to hold back, a lot of times they're very good at other things, that the visionary types need them, because we don't want to deal with those boring details. We just want to be futurists. So yeah, I wrote a book last year called Keeping Up with Emerging Technologies. It's for librarians. And it's one of the things in there is about understanding whether you're more of a visionary or an implementer type, and then how we can work together and the different methods you can use to keep up with new technologies depending on your personality.
So everyone make sure you get a copy of that, Keeping Up with Emerging Technology. So it's a really, really important point. I want to grab Kelly here just a second, but you're describing Geoffrey Moore's classic model of an organization or a group where you have early adopters, medium adopters, you have Luddites and so on. But what you're saying, this is really, really important, is that curve is likely to last for the next decade. So we'll keep seeing that. So when we began and we're talking about the current stuff, talking about laptops and smartphones, basic AR, I mean, that is going to become emergingly attractive for people over the next 5 years, so that the old stuff will continue to be new. Kelly, greeting. Where are you today? Vicky, I'm sorry, Vicky, where are you today?
No, good. Sorry, I'm having problems with the chat box. So I just want to jump in terms of this is, and again, I come from K-12, so it's a different perspective. But what I found in the higher ed realm, even here in Eastern Iowa, and we've got really great classrooms and a whole nursing program with simulators that I just toured yesterday. I mean, it's incredible. But this has got to be collaborative. I mean, I say things. I was just talking yesterday with somebody, and I'm like, well, let your students use their phone. Well, what if they don't have a phone? Well, they might not, but let's go with the option as opposed to requiring it, provide the option, because I still think the power with all the mobile is about students being engaged. Because if a student has something on their phone, whether it's an image, something they've recorded or something they've seen, if they can share that with a group or a class like instantaneously on a screen, that's where the power is. It's about, we have to move away from the, I need to give them time to look it up in class and do it in class. That, I think sometimes the term flipped makes it sound contrite, but the power of flipped is that there's time for the collaboration, the conversation, the discussion together with the tools handy, as opposed to the other way around. So I think that's where access and everything comes, is in terms of I can engage students more readily and use that class time more collaboratively with the tech part ready to go, if that makes any sense. And again, I don't think it's about how long someone's been teaching. It's, we got to collaborate on this. If I can support you in terms of your design, your pedagogy, and what you're doing with students, that's what's going to be powerful. And I mean, I'm just the kind of person, I'm just going to keep talking, and eventually people will get this, and it'll be a lot, more integrated that way. But again, it's the power in the people, and it's those tools again, or the enhancement in what they do. I mean, I love the access that we have, but what it's doing is providing the conversation, the input, the dialogue. I want a nurse who's taking care of me, who's been through all this simulation stuff in their program. So
Right.
I think we're starting to get that conversation, but I just need more people to believe that, yes, I'm here to help. And yes, we can use these things to help you, not replace you, and not to, for you to fear. So that's just my little point. Yeah.
That's not little at all. That's huge, Vicki. That's so important. And I guess, looking to the next decade, that kind of collaboration across domains, across professions, across populations, that's just going to continue. Even as the tools get easier, they also become more powerful. Mm-hmm. We need to be aware of that. Friends, I have so many more questions, and this is such a rich topic, but we're actually done with our hour. We have just raced through the mobile future so quickly. And as Vicki just beautifully pointed out, this is actually the kind of example of a collaborative conversation with so many inputs, so many ideas from right now 2 different continents, and so many people. I'm just delighted and so honored to be part of it. Thank you all so much, especially Kelly, Joe, Maya, Nicole. We've been exploiting you ruthlessly up here on stage. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow all these people so that you can learn and see what they're doing. We have to, before we run out, I have to point you to the next couple of weeks. So just so you know that one thing we're about to launch is a new poll for the next reading for the book club. So we're going to have a nonfiction reading that we have to pick out. We'll be blogging about that tomorrow morning. So you want to think about which of these titles you'd be likely to read. Something from education, from technology, from economics, sociology, culture. We have a lot to choose from. And then we'll alert you by email about our plan for next week. And in the meantime, if you want to find out more about us, go to ftte.us or go to shindig.com. In the meantime, thank you again for this great glimpse forward into the next decade of education and technology. We'll see you back here next time.